the Sasquatch have been seen all around here for 100 years.
Yes.
And most recently, last year. It could be looking at you and you're not seeing it.
Yes, I heard. I will come back to that. I was just watching one of your YouTube interviews with, I believe it was Ron
Moorhead. Yeah.
Yes.
He's a very good example of this. I mean, he was in an area where there were they were there frequently, but
yes,
they can be invisible, and they might be checking you out and you don't even know they're there. So the thing to do is don't make too much noise and just listen. It's a feeling. You're going to sense the feeling of them before you see them. The area, the ambience will change. In my view, it's looking into creatures in other dimensions. And that's what Ron Moorhead said, the same thing. And he's been encountering them since the 70s. I mean, 50 years. This is not a guy that's reading science fiction books. He's not an internet junkie. He was out there with his pack horses at a hunting camp, and they kept coming up for years. And he is the one in that interview. He said, you should have seen a shadow. You should have seen, and there's nothing, but they're making sounds. You should have seen something, but you can't, you hear them, but they're right there, but you can't see them. It's hard to believe, Maria. I mean, our modern mindset doesn't believe these things, but there it is.
Yes, I was just watching that. I will also put the link down in the description box from YouTube, so that people can click on it and watch that interview, because I was going like, what? I have never thought about that. A quantum Bigfoot. Bigfoot explained by quantum physics. Yeah, that is an amazing thought. I never thought about that. I was really amazed. I was going like, what?
Is Bigfoot an undiscovered primate, a relic hominid, or an alien species? Why are so many encounters filled with unusual and extraordinary phenomena, like luminosities, time slips, and telepathic interactions? And how are cryptids related to ball lightning and orbs? Although crypto-zoology is not considered a real science, it is based on the science of zoology and paleontology, and can therefore offer a scientific solution in the existence of these cryptids and their evolutionary path. Welcome, or welcome back, to the Next Truth podcasts. Let's ask questions. Some cryptids might not exist, but there is a high possibility that others do. In fact, National Geographic proved that Hogzilla and the Congo Elephants, two cryptids thought to be hoaxes, did exist. If these cryptids once existed, then there could be scientific evidence that evolutionary routes onto how these creatures possibly evolved in union with the human evolution is available for us, and research the existence of today's cryptids. I am your host, Marianne van Driel, and today I'm welcoming back the director of the non-profit Institute for Resonance in Boulder, Colorado, Dr. Simeon Hein, and speak with him while he is on location in the Pacific Northwest area in the US about new scientific findings in coherent energy matter and how these ideas help explain paranormal phenomena like space-time anomalies and orbs seen around creatures like Bigfoot and other mysterious cryptids.
Dr. Hein, welcome back to the Next Truth podcasts with a brand new title. Let's ask questions. I see you are on location. Where are you exactly, and why are you on that location?
Oh, well, thanks for having me back today. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm in the Pacific Northwest area of the United States, and the landowner doesn't want me to reveal the specific location, but it's an area that has had I've had permission to come camp here for a while, and it's an area that has had Bigfoot, Sasquatch activity for, probably hundreds of years, because the reports, they go back quite a ways in this area. And I realized a few years ago that there was this sort of connection between these mysterious creatures and some of the other research I had been doing in remote viewing and crop circles. And so I've been camping out here a few weeks every year to, see if I can see anything or hear any sounds or anything like that. I've also, there are balls of light in this area occasionally too that I've seen. Yeah, and those topics go together. We can talk about why, but so it's an interesting area. I like to come camp out here in the spring when I can. So that's what I'm doing out here.
So why are they connected? Because now you are making me very curious. Bigfoot sightings and ball lightning, how are they connected?
It is a fascinating story. As you know, Maria, I've been looking into crop circles since 1997.
Yes.
And it came out of that class I took in remote viewing in 1996, where there was a crop circle target. And I was curious enough to want to go on a crop circle tour with a man named Ron Russell from the Denver area in Colorado. And the surprising thing is, once I got over to the UK and started walking around in the crop circles and talking to people, I learned there was a lot of camera and battery and electronics failure around crop circles. So that sort of got me hooked as a kid who used to assemble electronic kits from a store we had here in the US called Radio Shack. And they would have these inexpensive kits that you could get with your paper route money and assemble things and make little radios and little automatic lights and so I learned how electronics worked. But I never had any camera or battery or electronics failure when I was building kits. But somehow, and I saw it myself, in 1997, there was camera battery failure, solder joints melting on the inside of cameras around crop circles. So that's what kept me interested in crop circles for so many years, is what is it about the electromagnetic fields of a swirling area and a circle that could create enough energy that would affect our electronics. Well, the surprising thing was, a few years ago, I came across the Bigfoot topic. There was a museum in my area in Boulder, Bailey, Colorado, called Sasquatch Outpost. Someone had told me about this, and one day I was driving through with a friend, and I thought, why don't we just go in and take a look? She saw it first. It was a big picture of a Sasquatch on the side of the wall of the building. And once I began looking into this topic, I realized there are more sightings than are reported. People say sometimes when they go out to look for Bigfoot, Sasquatch, they just encounter balls of light. And the balls of light are something that I've seen myself around crop circles, and people have photographed around crop circles. There's a very good photo of it in my book, Opening Minds, from a German tourist who took it from Knapp Hill, looking over to Woodborough Hill, a big ball of light over a crop circle. So I really got hooked again to the Bigfoot topic, because what would it be about a seemingly flesh and blood creature that would affect electronics? Because normally, if you just go to the zoo, the bear in the bear area or the lions don't affect your camera. So
No.
there had to be something different about these creatures. And the more I looked into it, it was just a much more complex topic than I ever imagined. And there was more witness encounters than I imagined. So it became a very interesting topic to look into.
Yeah, well, that is very interesting because just before we got online, I was watching an interview of you, and it was an interview with Ron Moorhead, I believe.
Yep.
You were talking about quantum Bigfoot, how
Yes.
that this species is able to change matter into energy, and that is the reason why tracks suddenly stop, or that they are transparent or just invisible. How does that work? How did you came to a theory like that, a thought like that? Did you witness this, or somebody in your name did witness?
Maria, I started reading everything I could about Bigfoot that seemed to report the whole story. There were some websites and people that wanted it just to be like a unidentified anthropoid, an unidentified primate, like an ape. And I had heard this years ago. I knew they were in this area from listening to late night radio, coast to coast, a show here in the US. And the people would say, they were anthropologists and zoologists. They would say this is a very rare type of ape, an undiscovered type. And, you know, before I looked into it, it seemed reasonable that might be what's going on. And it's no, and here's a weirder part of it. When I went to graduate school at Washington State University, in the anthropology department was a man named Grover Krantz. He was one of the first academics to take the Bigfoot topic seriously. And he thought it was an undiscovered type of ape. There is an area down from Washington State University in Oregon called the Walla Walla area, and there's a big mountain range near there called the Blue Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And there had been huge footprints seen there. People had seen the Sasquatch, people who were rangers that were patrolling this area that's a watershed. A watershed in the U.S. is an area that they don't want people to come in because they want to keep the water very clean because it serves as a drinking supply. So they had this area where people were not allowed to go in, yet the people that were patrolling it, the reserve officers that were patrolling this area to keep people out would find huge footprints and occasionally see these creatures. And Grover Krantz became interested in that and started studying that and got casts, 18 inches, 24-inch footprints, very wide, that look like our footprints, but very big.
Yes.
The idea back then is that this is some sort of undiscovered. It's either an undiscovered type of ape or, as they believed in Russia, an undiscovered type of human.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I read into this topic, the more I saw that people were having experiences around these creatures that don't fit the idea of an undiscovered ape or an undiscovered human. Maybe a paranormal ape or a paranormal human, but people were having time loss. They were seeing strange light phenomena. They would say that the Bigfoot could appear and disappear in front of their eyes. And the footprints, if you're tracking them on the ground, would just stop in wet ground. I mean, they would just stop completely, as if the creature just vanished in the middle of the air.
Yeah.
And we've heard this from all over the, areas where this creature has been seen, that the footprints disappear. There was even a book written about it called Where the Footprints End by Joshua Cutkin and Renner. And the whole book is about these weird phenomena around Bigfoot. So I really became interested in how could you explain if it's an escaped gorilla?
Yes.
Why would you have all these same phenomena that you get around UFOs, crop circles, ghosts, and other sorts of related phenomena. The UFO part is particularly interesting because people often see these creatures in areas where there are UFO sightings too. So the more evidence that I came across, the more I realized this was not an escaped gorilla, which is what people used to think they were when they encountered them. They didn't know what these were, so they would think maybe there was a circus nearby and one of the monkeys or gorillas had escaped. And if you look in the stories from the US going back 50, 70, 100 years, they would call them escaped gorillas. Yeah. But we also have the Native American tribes in the US who've been here for hundreds or thousands of years, and thousands of different tribes. There were, I believe, 5,000 or 6,000 types of languages, Native American languages in North America at one time. So many different tribes and identities. Most of them, almost all of them had a name for Bigfoot.
Okay, logic, yeah.
Sasquatch.
Yes.
Bakwas, as some of them called them. And they had stories about them. And the interesting thing is, if you look at the rock carvings in places where there are rocks, where they've carved pictures of beaver or, lizards and fish, they also have carvings of Bigfoot. And these are not people who are going to be making things up. They don't have time to do that. They didn't have Twitter and YouTube back then to invent things and create stories. They're putting things on rocks that they're seeing with their eyes. And they saw the Bigfoot creatures. So this is something that has been around a long time. And it's really interesting why we know so little about them. Because
perhaps it is. Yeah. It is a possibility that this is a still undetected or an undiscovered species of ape-like or human-like, and that it is much heavier and thus has bigger feet, so it needs to carry, and smaller, so it has bigger feet, so to carry its weight. But by means of having this huge strength, it can jump higher than we can imagine an animal can do, not to mention that humans cannot do so, and it jumps into a tree. So that could be an idea for why this trek stops. Because if you can change matter into energy, there has to be a nuclear power energy, and that is a huge amount of energy for a biological species.
Yeah.
You will burn, right?
No, yeah. So the areas where the tracks disappear, there's no trees around. It's not like there's somewhere where they could have gone. They just disappear in the middle of open space. After miles of people tracking them. Jonathan Dover, the Navajo ranger from the Navajo reservation mostly in Arizona, talked about seeing this himself. He was an experienced tracker, and he talked about the tracks disappearing. I think you're right. This creature is capable of harnessing a type of nuclear energy that we are not consciously doing, you and me and our audience, in the way we live. But it has to be harnessing a huge amounts of energy to do what it does. These creatures can run, they can keep up with cars on the highway if they want to. They can run that fast, and yet they weigh 1,000 pounds. Normally, as creatures get bigger, they get slower. But this creature, it doesn't fit the typical weight to speed slope that you find of animals, that lighter animals tend to be faster, like cheetah or even hummingbirds. And, normally the fastest animals you have tend to be lighter and smaller. Even dinosaurs could only go, from what I read, maybe I think it was like 5 or 6 meters a second, but this creature is capable of going 20 times that speed at top speed. And it is, bear can run like that too, but they can't keep it up. But these Sasquatch have been just seen running alongside cars for quite some distance. They're quite athletic. So I would agree with you. They're harnessing some energy in nature that already exists. I'm absolutely convinced of this because you mentioned them going into trees, but people actually see them float into trees. Float. Yes, they describe them gliding, almost gliding across the ground when they move. When they come down from trees, sometimes you get the full weight, like you're talking about. I've talked to people in this area that have heard them walking around, and they said the ground, there was a tremor every step. Okay. But otherwise, when they come down from trees, it doesn't seem like they have the weight that you would expect from something that's 7, 8, 9, 10 feet tall, even taller, 600 to 1,200 pounds. But sometimes they seem to be able to float into trees or glide down. So I think if we look at all the evidence, we have to be honest here. They're using principles of energy, nuclear principles of energy, that we are just learning to understand. Now, I don't think that these principles of energy are completely unknown or unidentified. These already exist in different areas. I mentioned crop circles, but these creatures know how to harness that. And I just finished writing a book about what I think this energy source is, and that will be out in July, Dark Matter Monsters. Yeah. And so I think logically and scientifically, if you look at the evidence and what people say they're experiencing, thousands of people, it suggests there's another energy principle at work. Not a new energy. These creatures must be very old. Something that we forgot about, that they know how to do, that we need a lot of complex technology even to recreate, that they're tapping into from the Earth, from the cosmos, and are able to bring it together in a way that gives them access to quite a large amounts of energy to be able to do what they do.
Kinetic energies. Now, yeah. Well, you say that they can speed up. Is it perhaps a possibility, because I was also listening to these Sierra sounds, I believe it is called?
Yeah, the Sierra sounds, right.
Yes, and that there is, like with tigers, there is a tone, a sound in their roar that can give you this feeling of, or I should fight, or I should flee. So that I believe it's ultrasound, or is it infrasound? I believe it's infrasound.
Right.
Is it possible? Yeah. Do you think it is possible that these creatures can send out, like particular monks can use their vocal cords with producing several sounds, that they produce this kind of infrasound so that cars, for instance, are being slowed down, or that they are speeding up? Is there a possibility, or am I mumbling something?
No, Maria, I think you're right on. That's the conclusion I came to looking at a lot of this evidence, and it surprised me too. What I came up with is, and I can't prove this, they're using their vocal cords and their sound creating apparatus to generate something like a piezoelectric type of energy. We all do that from our bones, I imagine from nails. We already create piezoelectricity. It's the electricity you create when you put pressure on a crystal. And it's what makes electronics work, is this slight pressure and vibration can create electrical signals. You can turn sound into energy. And I think what they're doing when they're making this howling sounds and the shrieking sounds, many people have assumed it's just kind of a type of dominance to mark their territory, to scare people away. That might be what it is, but it also could serve the function to generate piezoelectricity or another type of infrasound, as you're saying, transforming that into a real type of energy to slow cars down. There are reports of them catching up with cars at highway speeds, and if you hit one of them, they can chase you and break your windows. They can do a lot worse than that. We don't really know exactly what we're dealing with here, but I would say you're onto something there. There's something about the sound if you talk to witnesses, Maria, that have been around these sounds of the Sasquatch, they say it can make you feel really strange. One woman I talked to from Colorado said she felt confused for about a day and a half after being around the Sasquatch, a mental confusion. Now, is the Sasquatch using that as a type of hunting technique to kind of confuse their prey? That's one possibility. But I mean, this is something that we really need to explore. And so the Sierra sounds, thanks for bringing it up. That is Ron Moorhead's huge contribution to this area. He recorded those sounds right outside their hunting structure up in the Sierra Nevada National Forest, where they had built a hunting structure. It wasn't legal to build structures up there, and the National Forest Service eventually made them take it down. But they did have it up there for many years. And he, in the interview that you mentioned, he said they put microphones in the walls and drilled little holes to capture. And if you listen to, I would encourage the audience, if you haven't heard Sierra sounds, just search for it, look for it on YouTube. It's the most astounding thing I've ever heard. It's another life form communicating with each other in this sort of gibberish language. To our ears, it sounds like gibberish, or some people say reverse samurai Japanese, like a reverse Asian language. It's the linguists that listen to that language, Scott Nelson and others, said this is a language. We don't know what they're saying, but they're definitely the basic forms of words in their language, and it's really fast. And the funny thing again is Ron said he would be recording those conversations between the Sasquatch. And they brought up skeptics, by the way, and the skeptics determined it was real. The skeptics thought there has to be a trick. There's speakers hidden. They have actors. No, the skeptics were there, Al Berry, and they wrote their own books about it, saying they changed their mind from being skeptics to saying this is a real phenomena. What really, and it's Ron Moorhead's book, Quantum Bigfoot and Voices in the Wilderness. You know, reading those, he says they were so close, but they couldn't see them. And in my interviews, I asked him, did you ever see them at all? And he said once. Once he saw them at a distance. Okay. Only once he started going up in 72 to 2018. So that's nearly 45 years of contact. And he only saw them once, but you can hear those sounds. They're like right next to the structure. I think it's the weirdest, most incredible thing I've ever come across is this topic. Because Maria, there could be life forms around us that we don't see. And if they don't want to be seen, maybe they're watching us and we can't see them. I mean, I wouldn't even believe that a couple of years ago, but I believe it now.
Well, it's like with ants. You know that they are there somewhere, but you cannot see them because they are living in a complete dimension, a different dimension. Well, they are living in our reality, but in a complete different dimension. So, but I heard those Sierra sounds in the interview, and I was thinking like,
you broke up for a second. Go ahead, repeat that. You were listening to the Sierra sounds, and what happened when you listened to the Sierra sounds?
So. Well, to me, nothing happened in my mind, but I was listening to those sounds, and I was thinking to myself, it almost sounds like a mixture of a human being and, I'm sorry to say so, a wild pig or a hawk or something like that, right. Like that sound. So I couldn't. Also, I was listening to that and I was going like, somewhere there's a language in there. Somewhere it almost sounds as if you can understand it, but not really. So It is a very odd sound, and I have absolutely no idea where that is coming from. Have you seen in your time of research for Bigfoot and ball lightning and how the connection is, have you seen or witnessed or encountered any Bigfoot species?
I haven't physically encountered them to my mind. Now, I think that people who do encounter them may be forgetting about it too, because it's just so weird that your mind, you don't want to talk about it to anyone. Groups of people that encounter them don't want to talk about it again. It's that, it's that strange. But
you're back.
Sorry.
Most of the times you are being recorded and I am like a frozen image. So.
That is weird. I haven't encountered directly, but when you have this type of contact, it doesn't always start with a direct sighting. They enjoy puzzles. They like to play with puzzles and to play with human objects. And people often find that if they put something artistic on the ground, like a pattern of crystals or rocks in these very remote areas, they will come back a day or two later and it's been rearranged into another intelligent pattern.
Do you think that this rearranging of crystals has to do or something to do with this species, these creatures, understanding the frequencies or the connections between these crystals, and that it is possible? I don't know if anybody has tried to research this, to record any sound that is being made by these rearranged crystals.
No, Maria, there's so much research we could be doing in this area.
Yes.
We don't even know a tiny bit of it, but this is a very intelligent species. Some people who've encountered them think they're more intelligent than we are. They think they intelligent in their ability to anticipate your actions. They also can do something else, apparently. They can make objects appear or disappear in your area.
Okay.
There's a woman who took my resonant viewing class, and I mentioned her in my book, Dark Matter Monsters.
Yes.
Julie from Alabama. She encountered one as a child in Indiana at the end of the block. It was picking berries. It was very tall and had totally white hair. And it just looked at her and walked away. But she knew it wasn't anything that she could identify. And her parents tried to convince her that it was the neighbors in a fur coat in July. So years later in Alabama, she needed a pipe wrench to fix some plumbing in the kitchen. And she didn't have a wrench, and she was at the point of tears because there was a leak and the water was coming out of the sink or something like pipe. She goes outside to her driveway and there's a plumbing wrench, the exact size that she needed. Not from her house. It was just there. Now, you could think maybe that was just a random coincidence. I mean, somebody walked by and left a pipe wrench just when you needed it. But other people who research this area, who get to know the Sasquatch, have reported the same thing, that they can leave objects, like they show up in the air. These are called apports. And Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff mentioned these things happening when Uri Geller was being researched at SRI. That objects would show up in the air and fall to their feet. Things that they had been missing for a long time. Personal objects that they couldn't find would reappear in the air and fall to their feet. This is from Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff, laser scientists. They're not people who fool around. Again, it's something that I found challenging to believe, but here I'm hearing it from Russell Targ, Hal Puthoff, and Uri Geller at SRI, where they're inventing remote viewing, and it shows up again with Bigfoot. So it has to be that there's other principles of physics and at work here, and this creature can tap into it. We can tap into it too, Maria. I mean, I've been a meditator since I was a teenager. I do something called transcendental meditation, TM. And I believe humans can also develop these abilities. It's just there's a part of our mind, your mind and my mind, that is skeptical because we were raised in a Western tradition that needs evidence. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but there's another side to this, Maria, which is the stigma attached to talking about these topics I mean, I don't care what anybody thinks about me anymore. I'm going to pursue the data and the truth. But a lot of people encounter these Bigfoot and don't want to talk about it because they think that they will be ostracized by their neighbors. And they're told sometimes by their companies, if they're policemen or they're loggers, don't talk about this or you'll lose your job. We'll fire you. It's almost like people don't want to discover this creature because it would cause changes in how our society works to recognize that there's, other intelligent life forms out there. So is it animal or human or a mix? It is something else. And the descriptions are so varied. Some people, like you're saying, said it sounded like a cross between a pig and a human, just like you're saying. Some people thought it was a cross between an ape and a cat. And sometimes people say it looks more like a human, and some people say, no, it didn't look like a human. It looked like an ape with a flat face. And they said, you're never going to convince me these are humans. They're animals. So you have a full range of creatures, all the way from animal to almost human, but just big and hairy. Some people describe them as cavemen running on all fours.
Okay.
It is this. It's so hard to even get a sense of the parameters of what we're talking about here. I mean, this is as strange as the UFO topic because there's stigma attached. People are sometimes frightened by these creatures. They're sometimes chased in the backwoods. They have traumatic encounters and they don't even want to think about it ever again. I don't like to say this, but some people don't want to go in the woods ever again after encountering these. They're too frightened. It's just too, they weren't prepared. They didn't believe in these things and they encountered something that's 800 pounds and 10 feet tall. The sound that they make, people describe if you're close to them when they're talking or when they're doing the shriek or the howl, it makes your clothes vibrate as if you're in front of speakers at a rock concert. Have you ever been to a loud rock concert and the speakers, you're near the speakers? People describe it as being that loud.
But inaudible, so meaning that it is infrasound.
Sometimes they just feel them. They feel the infrasound and there's no audible sound. Here's one of the symptoms that they are around. The area will get very quiet. Even the insects will stop making sounds. The insects, I doubt, are afraid of Bigfoot, but they do something to the space-time field.
Yes.
Where even the crickets can sense them and stop making noise. So if you're in, and I've talked to people around here that have experienced this, they've been in an area and it just got too quiet all of a sudden and they got an uncomfortable feeling and they left. It could be just that we're sensing some predator around, or they're creating infrasound. I'm not sure exactly. But look, this whole thing is fascinating. We don't talk about this. Look, I'm over a half a century old at this point, and I just came across this topic. Sometimes people don't even live as long as I've lived, and it took me this long to even believe that this was real because I heard about it, but I always pushed it away because I just thought undiscovered gorilla, and I pushed it away. Rare. It's not relevant. I was wrong. It's extremely relevant, and I think my feeling is there's other intelligent life forms that live around us that we don't see all the time. I think they can be invisible if they want to. And the evidence for that, and again, it's what I talk about in Dark Matter Monsters. I think they're tapping into the same energy that makes cold fusion, low energy nuclear reaction work. The same thing studied by Fleischman and Pons at the University of Utah, and Alexander Parkhomov in Russia, and Takeaki Matsumoto in Japan, Bob Grenier in Czechoslovakia, Martin Fleischman Memorial Project. Ken Shoulders is another researcher who looked at this. Tesla, obviously, going way back.
Yeah.
these people all describe that matter as we know it can have a dark form. It can turn into a cloaked form, especially balls of light and ball lightning. Ball lightning, we're used to thinking of a glowing ball. And I've read hundreds of these encounters with ball lightning. You can look at them online. They're databases where people have, and it floats, you know, thunderstorms, or comes out of the ground and floats across through your window, you know, shorts out electrical devices and so forth. It also has a completely dark mode where you won't see it, and it's still there. Would it be possible that there are life forms that know how to do this with matter, coherent matter, to switch into a dark mode where we wouldn't see them? They're cloaked. Because ball lightning, micro ball lightning, large ball lightning has a form that is not visible to the eye.
UV light, for instance.
Yeah, and infrared. UV and infrared,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
John Ramirez, who's a retired CIA officer who's been talking on podcasts here in the US and some in the UK, talked about these classified programs within the CIA to look at balls of light and orbs and things like this, in addition to UFOs. And he said that the CIA, after researching this, using the keyhole satellites, which have been operating since the 1970s, they could see these balls of light in the Earth's atmosphere, but they weren't always visible to the eye, but they could see them with the infrared optical equipment on the keyhole satellites. There are types of matter that can go into a cloaked form. Now, I imagine this has just been classified for a very long time because, I mean, the implications of things that could be invisible, the military implications are probably so huge that we haven't heard any public discussion of the topic. But this is what the Bigfoot are capable of doing, and perhaps other creatures like them. We haven't really talked about this very much in our society. Perhaps it's, I don't know, is it scary or weird? I don't know exactly why, but one more thing. There are counties in the United States that have laws against hunting Bigfoot. So they must exist because you have two counties in Washington State, Skamania and Whatcom County. It's in David Paulides' book, The Hoopa Project, and his second book, Tribal Bigfoot. He looked at the sightings around Native American reservations in California and other areas. And he found that there are actually laws against hunting them in some counties in Washington State. So, I mean, it's real enough that we have some laws about it, but we don't have very much public discussion. And one more thing, let me say this. I saw evidence at a conference just a couple of weeks ago in Bailey, Colorado. Somebody working at the Forest Service Department in Mount Hood, Oregon. Mount Hood National Forest is one of the huge old ancient volcanoes, Mount Hood, saw a Bigfoot reporting form on a desk. A Bigfoot reporting form. It was a serious form where you filled in where the sighting was at the time. And if I have a picture of it, it says Mount Hood National Forest Bigfoot reporting form. So, you know, this is real enough that the park services are talking about it within the organization, but they don't talk about it to the public. They might be concerned that they could frighten people away from national parks and forests.
It can also be that
it's a subject.
It can also be that they keep it as much as possible silent. That otherwise, thousands of people will go into the forest, will trample on nature and destroy it and starting to make these search hunts for a creature and driving it away perhaps. But regardless what it is, if it is a humanoid species or it is a quantum species, regardless of what it is, I think that there's something or some one of those species in the near, because it's constantly interacting with our connection. Constantly our connection is going away. You also mentioned...
I am hearing you fine.
Okay. So, but the connection is gone for a couple of seconds. I witnessed this already for, I believe, three times now.
Maybe there's a Bigfoot around.
That's what I was saying, because you were also telling about energy loss for batteries and
yes,
that there's weird stuff happening with electronics. Are you still there?
Yeah. No, okay. You're right, Maria. I mean, you get this, and I have asked people, they said that their cameras and batteries stopped working right after their encounter near the Bigfoot.
Yes.
Now, this is what you get around ball lightning. So my feeling, and I could be totally wrong about this, is there's a huge connection between Bigfoot and ball lightning in terms of the scientific principles at work. There's some fundamental fractal structure within both ball lightning and Bigfoot, or Bigfoot's able to tap into this sort of ball lightning energy, cosmic energies, the relic neutrinos that keep cold fusion reactions going. You know, there's a lot of science behind this, and Tesla found the same thing. He burned out a lot of transformers. He burned some out in New York City. I'm just taking a scientific point of view on this and saying, I don't think nature is creating all these ways of shorting out batteries. I think it's the same thing. Now, again, I could be totally wrong, but that's the point of view I'm taking here, is that when you create these coherent matter, ball lightning, it's particles that have come together in a quantum coherent way, that they're all at the same frequency and at the same temperature. It's called monochromaticity. I pretty much think that these creatures have found a way to manipulate this type of matter biologically. Humans like us need to create machines and technology to harness this energy. But it's already there. The electromagnetic field is already part of nature. Piezoelectricity is already part of nature. Lightning, ball lightning, these things are already part of nature. It would just make sense that even though we feel like we need to create mechanistic technology to control electricity and magnetism to make it do what we want, it would make sense that there are other creatures that can do this intuitively just from nature's evolution. And perhaps we don't know how to do it, but there's parallel species on Earth that know how to do it. And once you know how to do this, you can create cloaking. You can create these sort of anti-gravity effects. In other words, they almost created their own technology by going right to the source of nature. We do it through machines and engines and devices, microelectronics. But if someone else had found a way to do this, they might be living in a parallel reality, like the ants, in a sense that you mentioned before. Not literally a parallel reality, but almost like we can watch the ants, but they don't know we're watching them. It's sort of that sort of relationship, in a sense. I mean, it could literally be a parallel reality, or it could just be another slice of nature that is very good at being concealed. And I think the principles have already been explained by people like Ken Shoulders, who said it's very easy to create these exotic vacuum objects, this micro ball lightning, that it has a cloaked mode, that it creates anti-gravity, and that it's a type of energy source that taps into the quantum vacuum. You know, this idea that at the rest state, you mentioned quantum mechanics. The idea is not just particles and waves, the way a lot of people understand it. That's an aspect of quantum mechanics. But the other idea is that at the basis of matter is essentially an energy field that condenses into particles here and there. And at the very rest state, there's still energy, even at the point of least action in a quantum field, there's still energy, and that's called zero-point energy. And I guess what I'm saying is these creatures would be tapping into zero-point energy directly. That's what I think. That's where I think this leads. And that's why Ron Moorhead writes a book called Quantum Bigfoot. Now, did it take us decades to figure this out? Yeah, but I mean, it's not like we had a lot of help. People aren't studying this in universities openly. The people who study in universities say it's an escaped gorilla, or it's a, unidentified ape. They don't go any farther than that, and they won't look at the so-called paranormal aspect of it, the energetic aspect of it. It's really interesting. The people that have looked at this some of them don't want to go in any direction, but it's a flesh and blood, it's a Gigantopithecus. Now the Gigantopithecus, Gigantopithecus was a huge ape-like creature, millions of years ago. I forget exactly how many millions of years ago. It never stood up on two legs. It walked on all fours. It doesn't fit the Bigfoot description.
Well, perhaps Bigfoot is an evolved version of that species over time.
Well,
while I'm listening to you, I was thinking about could it be possible that these creatures, this species, is living in a Euclidean space, and that it is a geometric by nature, and in the moment that it is stepping into our density or our reality, if I may call it like that, it is taking this form of what we know as a biological species, and that this ball lightning is just a remnant energy from the moment that they are stepping back into their own dimension of reality.
That's a very interesting way to look at it.
I thought so.
No, that is very interesting, Maria.
It's just a babbling of Sanskrit, what I'm just talking about now.
No, Maria, that's very interesting because the witnesses report them stepping out of balls of light, like you're saying.
Okay.
And then disappearing into balls of light. Now, I think if I had heard this 20 years ago, I wouldn't have believed it, but I have heard it too many times from serious researchers. They see this sort of thing, and then eventually if you say, well, if this is happening, what does it mean? And what it means is something like what you're saying. They're in a parallel reality to us, even more so than the ants. Like, we can see the ants, but we can't see the Bigfoot. When they cross over into our reality, there has to be some sort of like a curtain or a threshold of them coming through into our electromagnetic gravitational space to take on a form that they do. And perhaps that involves balls of light being generated or something like that. People have even seen them throw balls of light at them. Their eyes glow. I mean, they don't glow from reflected light. Their eyes give off light like a searchlight, people have reported. They can. I'm not saying every single one of them. There's a lot of variation, but people report their eyes glowing like Christmas tree lights. And that must mean they're generating an energy source. They're generating energy within their bodies. They're able to manipulate it and use it in a useful way. I mean, it's just incredible. Once you get past the point where you deny that this is happening and you say, I just don't believe it, it's hard to believe. I know it's hard to believe, but I don't think thousands and thousands of people plus all the Native American tribes in the U.S. are making this up. And people report them going to invisibility, coming back. And so your idea, I think, is one possibility is as they transfer through, some of these phenomena show up at the same time. In the same way, when we launch a rocket, there's a lot of sparks and flame at the beginning, right?
Now you are on location. How long will you be there? Will you attend in this location? And what exactly are you going to look for at this moment? Or
well, I'm here for a couple of weeks. It's about the practical time that I can stay, and due to the modern wonders of technology, have internet out here, solar power. I do have night vision goggles. I'm listening for sounds. I have had things happen that I can't explain near where I'm camping. Yeah.
Already?
Yes. I had it. I've had objects that were buried in the ground taken out overnight and moved, and there's no logical explanation. I can't understand what could have. These are objects that have been buried for a long time, and they were just pulled out of the ground and moved a few inches away. I didn't hear anything. I didn't see it, but it was like, it's strange. It's strange to see something that's completely flat with the ground pulled out overnight. It would require a thumb, and
Yes.
I didn't do it. And as far as I know, there's no one else around here, especially they're not going to come where I'm camping at night. You would hear them. If it was a person, you would hear walking and there's no sound. It's the type of thing that these creatures, they do things like this. Now, I don't know what did this. I can't prove it, but I saw it and I have a photo of it where it had been in the ground perhaps for 2 decades, and this piece of wood is pulled right out, 2x4, perfectly rectangular, pulled out. If you read accounts of this, this is what these creatures do. They'll pull something out, they'll move it around, you move it back, the next night they've moved it back again. It's a type of communication. It's and I don't know if this is what it is. That is the only thing that I have seen in this area. I have talked to people who live around here who told me what their encounters were like. One person described something walking around his camper, his truck camper. As I mentioned before, he said it was so loud, every time it took a step, the ground shook. But when he looked out the window, he couldn't see anything.
Okay.
And in the morning, there were impressions all around the truck. But they weren't footprints. They were more squarish, deep. I don't know how to make sense of it, but he said whatever this was, it was so big, he felt it could have reached through the glass and pulled him out without even thinking about it.
Wow.
So, and these are just people you talk to around here, but I haven't encountered that. So, I mean, I'm coming at this more from an academic point of view, having read a lot. If I have an encounter like that, I'm perfectly happy to have it. I have, if you can capture something, video, trail cams, I'm always open to seeing something. But some of these encounters are quite, shocking for us humans who are used to, we think we're like the top dog on the planet. We're used to being like, we're the boss, right? Humans are, well, let's say we're not.
Until the mosquito is flying into the room, right?
Right.
So, but that would be a very frightening moment if I would witness that, if I would be there and experience that. I think I, sorry to say so, but I will pee right there where I'm standing, probably. So, but do you have a wild cam with you, or night vision cameras, or something that can record sound and image and etc. for the next couple of weeks? So
I do. I have trail cams set up and I have my night vision cameras. People who have seen them said you can see their eyes glowing through the night vision camera, even in a completely dark night, because their eyes give off some light. So I'm looking for these things, and if I get any evidence, I did hear a howl out here once, a very long howl, but there are wolves in the Northwest, so it could have been I couldn't say what it was. It just was a very different sounding howl that I had never heard before, and I only heard it once, and then it just didn't do it again. I didn't know, but I can say this: if the sightings are not too far away from here. They're recent. They go back from last year to decades ago. So whatever it is, it's in the area for the long term. There was a time when the Ptolemaic idea was common, that we're the center, the Earth is the center of everything.
Mm-hmm.
We're the very top of creation, of God's creation, and we're the center. And then Copernicus came along, Galileo, others, Giordano Bruno, and they said maybe we're not the center. And there's other planets and other galaxies. And all of a sudden we went from being the most important place to just another planet. Yeah, another planet, another species within a galaxy. And now even when Einstein created his general theories of relativity.
Yes.
The only galaxy that was known at the time was the Milky Way. Even in Einstein's early days, they didn't know about anything except the Milky Way. I don't think it was till the 1930s that more galaxies were discovered. Look how that wasn't too far a long time ago. Now just last week we had a picture of our own black hole, Sagittarius M87, in the Milky Way. So look how quickly science could change. Einstein, whose theories of relativity, general theory of relativity, predicted black holes. Even Einstein didn't believe it. I read his paper recently on black holes, written in 1929. He said it wasn't a convincing argument.
Oh, okay. He didn't even believe his own theory.
No.
Or idea or thought experiment.
Didn't believe his own theory. And it was Subramanian Chandrasekhar, the Indian physicist, who in 1931 said, well, he wasn't the first. A couple of physicists around then said, well, this suggests that there's a total collapse of a star at the end of its life, and it becomes a neutron star and then collapses into a black hole. The gravitational forces collapse it, yes, and it would not release any light. And very few people believed it, but we have two photos of black holes now, one from 2019 and one from last week or 2 weeks ago. So that's how things change as you get new evidence, and even the best scientists of the time might not believe it. And I think that's true with Bigfoot and cryptids, this whole range of creatures that seem to be invisible a lot of the time. It seems almost at the edge of credibility, almost at the edge of what your mind could really believe. You could go to a movie and believe it in the movie, but you wouldn't believe it's really true. But just like we learned to accept black holes and now we have photos of them, I think it's going to be the same with these creatures. It's other life forms that have other ways of relating to energy, nature, and they have more skills than we do in some ways. That is very hard for the human ego to accept. But that's the same thing that happened with Copernicus and Galileo. People wanted to be the center of everything, and it didn't turn out that way. At least not physically. We're not the center of the universe. The idea that I can see traced all the way from black holes is it's literally the same energy is that it makes black holes work. This is the same thing that makes cold fusion work, low energy nuclear reaction. If you put subatomic particles together really close,
yes,
start collapsing into themselves. That's how you create ball lightning. Black holes are lightning. It's the same thing. And the researchers that studied this called it mini black holes. They said it was the same thing because what drives low energy nuclear reaction, cold fusion, is this electronuclear collapse of when particles are really close, like electrons. The repulsive force is overtaken by an attractive force. And it's so strong, it pushes these particles into a very small space where they lose their identity individually and all become the same, monochromatic, and they create a small black hole. And that's what creates a lot of energy and a lot of the coherency in coherent matter, is this gravitic collapse. And you can get there from different directions. So that is how black holes are related back to Bigfoot. What drives these cold fusion reactions is a type of gravitic collapse. And that's what Takeaki Matsumoto from Japan said. We didn't hear about him until recently because his work was censored from the nuclear research journals. They didn't want him talking about ball lightning. But he said way back in the early 90s that this is a type of electronuclear collapse that's creating microball lightning, and it's creating cold fusion reactions. And if that's what powers some of these cryptid creatures, it would be the same thing that powers black holes, just at a biological level. In other words, It's a way that a biological organism can harness the energy of a collapsed material object that collapses into a black hole just at a microscopic small state. It wouldn't be literally sucking in light, but it would appear very odd. And you do get this around the sightings of these creatures, these weird light anomalies. You would probably have heard of Skinwalker Ranch, the area that was researched in northern Utah. Okay, so when the Defense Intelligence Agency sent people out to look at Skinwalker Ranch from the U.S. government as part of the OSAP UFO program, Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Application Program, it's one of these long acronyms, OSAP, they encountered dark shapes that were cold, and the temperature dropped and created a feeling of fear in them. And this is totally consistent with what we know about the dark mode of ball lightning and so forth. It's a type of a gravitational collapse, can affect the light, as it pulls in energy, it can drop the temperature. It can make an area feel suddenly cold. And people around Bigfoot have reported this, and UFOs, by the way. They have reported that the temperature just seemed to drop all of a sudden right before they encountered their Bigfoot. Strange.
Like in the moment that paranormal investigators say, okay, this is a cold spot. You mean like something like that?
Exactly. Maria, cold spots are a primary identifier of coherent matter.
Okay.
So
what you are saying, please correct me if I am absolutely incorrect, that Bigfoot, alien visitations or sightings, and paranormal experiences like ghost appearance, they are all the same.
They are, yes. I thank you for asking that question. This is what keeps me going every day. I'm not literally saying it's all the same thing, but it's working off the same scientific principles of coherent matter. And because coherent matter can manifest itself in different ways, it could be manifested through biological organisms. It could be manifested through chemical, physical reactions like ball lightning. And that extraterrestrials showing up here could be using the same principles, which would be another reason why you get camera and battery failure around UFO sightings. You've probably heard the UFO comes over the car and the car engine stops. Yeah, then when the UFO moves away, it starts again. Sometimes it starts on its own. This has to be, in my mind, the same scientific principles. I'm not saying that literally Bigfoot are aliens or ghosts. I'm just saying that we're seeing the same underlying symptoms in every case. It could be possible that they are different things entirely, and I'm wrong. There's another possibility that this is the same principles. It just seems to me that nature doesn't recreate new principles all the time for every single phenomena. They all seem derived from the same fundamental principles of energy, electricity, magnetism, gravity in myriad forms. And I think humans are one branch of this, and we're not necessarily the most adept at doing this, which leads our ego to want to deny all this because we want to think we're the boss. And if something's around that makes us feel like we're not the boss, like extraterrestrials or Bigfoot or ghosts, and you have that feeling of panic and fear like you're not in control, we don't like that. We like this feeling of control. But when we're around these phenomena, it's really powerful and we're not in control. People lose time. They go unconscious. I've had friends that I know tell me they have gone for hikes in Bigfoot areas. They didn't see a Bigfoot, but they all of a sudden were back in the parking lot after hiking 20 minutes, and they don't know how they got there.
Okay.
Two people, they will go for a hike, they're hiking along, all of a sudden they're back in the parking lot, and they don't know how they got there. They go to the ranger. They say, what happened? The ranger's, I don't know. And they already suddenly look at the watch. A lot of time has passed. This when you encounter these phenomena, it can literally override your consciousness, and that isn't always a pleasant experience for everybody. I mean, you could lose time, you could wake up in another area. It's strange, but this is, I think, what we're around, and I think we have to come to terms with it to talk about it, at least intelligently. If we're surrounded by other intelligent life forms that are capable of doing this, for whatever reasons, I think we should at least know about it, even if we can't do anything about it right now.
This made me think about an experience I had years ago, and I spoke about this in another podcast as well, that I was laying on the couch dozing off in the evening. My husband was a few meters remote from me in the same room, and suddenly there was this person all glowing in orange yellow light, and I got this feeling that there was a telepathy in anesthesia, and I was trying to fight it, but I couldn't, and I fell asleep. So I felt this huge fear inside myself, and in my head I heard this figure, "Don't say you see something happening."
No, I'm listening to a rain cloud coming this way. I'm just thinking. I just saw some drops, and I'm looking, and I'm seeing, hey, I'm outside there. It looks like it's being okay. Continue your description.
So no, not that you have to run away and that there is a Bigfoot coming or some wildlife that is going to attack you.
I have no shelter here if it starts raining.
Oh, okay. So I will be quick then. So, but anyway,
and have to wrap it up, I'm afraid.
Yes, I'm going to wrap it up. I see the rain falling.
It's a great story. Go ahead.
Sorry. So, and I felt this anesthesia running through my mind, and in my head I heard this figure saying, "Okay, don't worry, don't be afraid, you are not going to be harmed." I fell asleep like in an operation, and then hours later I woke up in my bed, and I didn't walk to my bed, so that moment of time slip. So I had that reminded me of what you were saying about these people suddenly.
Yeah. It's very common, and I think that the type of time slip that you experienced and my friends hiking and that people have around UFOs and Bigfoot, they could be separate things, but maybe they're the same thing. I'm just raising the possibility this is the same sort of thing, and it's what you encounter from these sorts of phenomena is, time slips, battery failure, camera failure. We're getting hail. This is great.
Yes, I see. Let me ask you before we are closing out.
Yes.
I want to ask you one more thing. Is what is the most compelling evidence that you found that Bigfoot is truly existing in our density, in our reality, in our dimension that we can see?
It's simply the accumulation of evidence and the commonality between stories of people who've never gone public before. There's certainly footprints, and there's hair samples, and there's recordings. The Sierra sounds are is good evidence for. There's the long howls that sound like a fire siren going way up and way down in Ohio places. And then there's just accumulation of evidence from hundreds and thousands of people. It's so similar, you think, wow. Okay, we're.
Please go inside.
I can't go inside. There's no structure around here. Maria, we're going to have to continue another time. That's, I think, the best. That's my evidence, is the accumulation of just so many, the commonalities between what we're hearing.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Hein. We're going to wrap up. I'm going to put in all the links in the description box where we can find your books and your YouTube interviews and etc. And I wish you an enormous, fantastic time over there. And please go find some shelter because I see the hail falling.
Okay, Maria. Thanks very much. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Okay, bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
I'd like to thank you all for tuning in today on the Next Truth podcast's Let's Ask Questions. Make sure to visit our website That is www.nexttruth.com. That is nexttruth, all in one word, .com. And let us know what you think about our podcasts. While you're at it, if you find value in this show, we would appreciate a rating on our website in the section Testimonials. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel and share the links on your social media. I am Marianne van Driel with The Next Truth. Let's ask questions. Be sure to stay tuned for our next episode.